by telling you a little bit about how we met. A lot of people ask how we met and why we wrote this book, and then the title of the book. And so I'll kind of kick it off. So I am a Raleigh native and was educated in Chapel Hill, worked in Durham, and now live here in Chatham County. And so I'm very privileged to be in Chatham County and honored today to be here. Lisa and I, and some of you guys don't know this, you know, we were competitors in the mid-90s. So when I was head of business development for Quintiles, Lisa was the head of business development for PPD, a company we competed with. And
we wouldn't have written a book together then.
No, we were competitors like most women are with one another. So we were competing with each other, but for business. We were competing for multi-million-dollar contracts. And we would see each other actually in New Jersey and New York and usually up the Northeast corridor. We would meet in the lobby of a pharmaceutical company. And she would be coming out the door, and I was going in the door, and the claws were out, you know, because she was this very attractive, lovely, smart woman. And,
like she's not.
and I knew if I saw Lisa there that it was going to be tough for me to win that business because I knew she was good at what she did. And so we had a mutual friend in the late 90s for years telling us that we should meet. Because he said, you guys are the same person. You need to meet. And both of us
said no thanks. We met.
We did not think we would ever be friends. And so then in 2002, she had moved on from PPD. I was still at Quintiles, but in a different role. And he asked us to have lunch together.
At Baby Moon? Any of you all know
Oh,
that?
yeah, Baby
Well,
Moon.
he didn't show up. So the two of us got to Baby Moon, and there we were. But he was right. After about 10 minutes into our conversation, we were finishing each other's sentences and developed the friendship that has ultimately resulted.
And you'll see that we haven't stopped finishing each other's sentences today. And I will ask, can you hear us in the back? Because they have a microphone, but we have to go back and forth. So both of us speak loudly, so we thought we'd be all right. Okay, good. So that's kind of how we met. So then the book. Again, some of you know our husband, at least my husband, and I know at least one of you knows her husband. Anyway, in about 2006, we were having dinner. We had gotten our friendship to a point where we were like, you know, starting to have dinner with our husbands. They enjoyed one another, and our husbands one night, as we were just sitting there talking business, telling story after story, and I experienced this, and oh my gosh, I did too. They said, you need to write a book. You know, younger women need to hear the story, like Tori, you know, who's going to be coming out into the working world soon. And so you need to write this for 25, you know, so we thought 25 to 45. And where we ended up is that the basis of the book, that everybody wants to remember who you are, but achieve success, create balance, experience fulfillment. There's no man who doesn't also want those three things. So we have had a number of men read the book and say, this isn't just for women. So it is women telling the stories, but those three are the kind of three sections of the book.
And at the end of each of the chapters in here, and we'll tell just a little bit about each of the sections. We won't read more than 50 or 60 pages. So but at the end of each of the chapters is a letter from an executive woman to her younger self as to what she wished she had known back in her 20s or 30s, and related to any of the topics. We decided not to limit when we asked these women to write these letters, so it was just a true what I wish I'd known when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
So maybe we can...
Yeah. So the name of the book, we'll just tell briefly. So the name of the book actually was kind of chapter 1, and it was around, it's called Building Your Brand and Developing Who You Are. And so we started out the chapter with the story of where Remember Who You Are came, and then as we continued to write the book, it became a working title. Thought we would change it, but then our publisher, Morgan James, actually liked the title, so we stuck with it. And so you'll read about it in the first chapter, but basically it was a saying that my parents, and has anybody's parents ever said that to them? We've heard that in a number of places. When when I would go out on a date, they would look at me and say, remember who you are. A lot of it was in the eye. It was not about the words, but the words you associated with the eye roll and the remember who you are. And so that was kind of starts out chapter 1. And then just throughout the book, we decided that it really is about, for us, we felt like the stories that we were telling went back to, creating who you are and then sticking to it and just continuing to be you throughout your career.
It helps when we can be who we are in our personal and our professional lives, and it rolls all the way through. It also helps when we're facing difficult decisions, because if we've made the decision that integrity is part of our core brand, well, if we have a decision or asked to do something we might not want to do, well, we already know who we are, and that decision's that much simpler because we're decided we're going to be a person of integrity.
So it's not a fiction book where we're giving you any spoilers, but I will tell you, so maybe you'll want to buy a copy. The part 1, Achieve Success. The 3 chapters are Building Your Brand, Delivering X Plus, and Authentic Leadership. So shall I read? I'm going to read just a little bit from Authentic Leadership. But as most know, I like to sing, so I sort of try, but, Ashley is going to absolutely remember this, so that's why I have to do this chapter. 1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. Toe tapping, bebopping, and big smiles filled the room as the tunes of Bill Haley and his comments wailed through the cafeteria. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock. We're going to rock around the clock tonight. It was Employee Appreciation Day. A tradition started to build pride and camaraderie in our ranks, a way to say thank you. More than 1,000 people came for lunch and games, team building, and awards. Some executives participated, some did not. We weren't forced to, and when I was asked to MC the 50s themed event, I said yes without hesitation. Maybe a little. I rented a poodle skirt and even learned how to skateboard so I could make my grand entrance on wheels. I was greeted with laughter, applause, and appreciation, I think, from the crowd. I showed up. So that chapter is about being authentic in your leadership, and I know that day I was coerced into wearing a poodle skirt and being on a skateboard, which was, I felt like it was a little silly for an executive, but on the other hand, I am silly, and I just decided to be me. And I wouldn't say I was always that way in my career, but when I got to a point and I decided that I was in leadership and I wanted to lead others, that I really wanted to just be me. And so I was just a little bit silly that day. And I know that there were people laughing with me, but there were also a lot of people laughing at me. And so those are the people that I just knew weren't going to get on the bus with me. And, you learn to know who were those that were on the bus with you and those who weren't. And you learn to manage so. Anything else you want to say about the first 3 chapters? Something in my throat.
I would say just in terms of building your brand, we have spent a lot of time and do workshops actually on building your brand. And if none of you have sat down and really thought about building your own personal brand, we can all sit here and rattle off a lot of corporate brands or logos or think, oh, that means that. We see that logo, we think of that, or we hear that phrase. And we like to challenge people to come up with your own personal brand. We've done it in 6 words, and we've actually challenged ourselves to our 1-word personal brand because it kind of gets to the core of who you are, and it takes a while to get there. Mine is connector. I like to connect with people. I like to connect people to other people as I meet them.
And mine is server.
And so it's just a good exercise. We talk about it a bit in here, but just figuring out who you are, it takes a lot of self-awareness, but it kind of helps you figure out your purpose and your passion and what drives you. So, well, I'm going to read a little bit from the chapter called the Juggling Act, which is in our section on creating balance, because it's something I think we all have more opportunities than we can do in any given day. Many working women, especially mothers, would agree that their lives often resemble a 3-ring circus. At any given time, we could be flanked by a high-flying trapeze act in one ring and daredevil stunts in another. And in the 3rd ring stands Mom. Mom's the juggler. 3, 4, maybe 5, 6, or more balls are being tossed in the air. Some soar high, some stay close. It didn't happen overnight, of course. We may have started by learning to juggle a career and a spouse. Maybe we went back to school, or we took on a big volunteer project. Over time, maybe we added one or many children, and then all of their activities. Then there's our faith, our home, our friends, our sanity. Is there any room for an exercise ball? A good nutrition? A healthy meals ball? There seems to be no end to the number of balls we're trying to keep in the air. The effort required to keep them all moving is relentless and exhausting. You may feel that if even one ball drops, you will be thrown off balance and the whole act will come crashing down. No. Let go of that notion. You will achieve the holy grail of a balanced life only if you accept that some of those balls can and should drop, at least for a season. It's much easier to know if you know your priorities. So one of the things that we talk about in the book is really figuring out what our priorities are. And I wish I could juggle, and it would have been nice if I'd learned how, but I could not be balanced and learn how because it would have taken me 24 hours a day. And it's not really a ball, but it's a Waterford crystal heart. So this is what we use to symbolize like our core values, our priorities that are key.
Which for us are our family and our faith.
Is something that we don't want to drop, because if we drop it, it is going to require such immense effort to put it back together. And it's valuable. It's the most valuable of any of the things that we have up here. Next is a glass ball. Right behind there, we both have put a lot of emphasis on our careers. They've been glass balls for us. At times they've been in different places. At times they, for me, probably before I found the balance that I needed and fulfillment I needed were crystal balls. But I have found much more balance and fulfillment by having it as a glass ball. But something I don't want to drop because, again, it's something I value and it's something that if I were to drop this, it's going to shatter. We have rubber balls, and normally we've been on hardwood floors, and I don't know where it might go, but you know what? What happens to a rubber ball? You drop it, it is going to come right back to you. So if you are juggling lots of things and you drop this, you're going to barely realize that you dropped it.
Yeah, and I'd say, I've had 2 rubber balls. One was laundry, because I could throw it down, but it would bounce back up. But it was not important to me. Okay? But also, my friends actually were a rubber ball throughout my career, and I would say now that I'm more advanced in my career, or in my age, etc., that my friends are a glass ball now because I don't want to lose them and drop them. But I have to say, my career definitely came ahead, and it was a bouncing ball with my friends, and, my husband was the one making play dates for me when I was out, when I was in town, which wasn't very often.
And other things that are rubber balls, it's throwing the perfect, 6-year-old birthday party, or it's always having a clean house, or thinking that if you want to have friends over, you got to make a home-cooked meal, and, a pizza will do. And then the other... I like to cook, you don't.
I know. Some of my friends from the neighborhood know. They had to tell me what an avocado was one time.
And then the other thing, and I just have a little collection of these, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but we all tend to juggle some balls that it might be better if, when they fell, we left them on the ground. Maybe the ball of saying yes to everything that comes along because we just can't bring ourselves to say no. But if we say no, we're really giving ourselves permission to say yes to things that are our crystal and glass balls. Maybe it's the comparison. We're spending our time wishing that we were somebody else, or trying to be somebody else, or wanting to be somebody else. So that's a ball that we can often spend a lot of time on that we probably don't need to. Or the if-onlys. If only I'd made that other choice. And then you've spent all this time, or guilt, false guilt, worry. A lot of times if we do something that we shouldn't have done, we should feel guilty about it. But there are times that people try to put guilt on us that we just don't need to accept.
And we have lots of stories in the book in terms of that false guilt or real guilt. And, there's a story of a hurricane, which you can read about, and I won't tell today. But there were times that you felt guilty. But if you prioritized things right and you knew that your career was a priority for you, then you tried not to feel guilty when you missed a, kindergarten graduation because, Miss Tyndall, who taught my son and daughter in the 3rd grade, knows that I missed a lot of things. But, it was a choice that I made, and I didn't spend time feeling guilty about it. And when the kids came in the door, I'm so sorry I wasn't there, I'm so sorry I wasn't there, because then that makes them feel pain and sorrow and guilt and whatnot for it. But, we just went with it because it was, what we decided as a family to do, and it's how we operated. And so we didn't, we tried to let that ball, that lead guilt, that guilt just go to the bottom and not try to juggle it, with everything else. So anyway, there's a lot about guilt in the book.
Yeah, because too often we let our to-do list or let these other things that really aren't priorities occupy our day. And I don't know if everybody can see it, but if we leave the lead balls where they belong, we'll actually be able to smile because we'll have a lot more time and we'll be spending our time doing what our priorities really are. And we'll find a lot more balance.
So the balls may be a little silly, but they're also a reminder and a visual to, that you can juggle your way through. And we weren't saying that we were perfect at it, but we think we've given some tips and hints about how we managed to juggle some pretty busy lives for many years.
Right, and it's a question that we often get asked, especially when we've been coaching or mentoring others, is do you believe you can achieve balance? And we do believe we can find balance. You just got to have your priorities in order to do it.
So the last 3 sections are on experiencing fulfillment, and there's a lot of different ways. One of those is we talk about complimenting beats competing, and that women, hola Maria, and that we compete with other women, and that we are here as a bit of role models that we shouldn't compete with each other, and we should start complimenting and supporting each other as women. And anyway, I was getting distracted a little bit because Maria is part of my support and how we compliment each other, because she helps our family in many, many ways. And then the last chapter is on whom can I serve today, and we can talk about different ways that we serve and we mentor others, because a lot of times we think we don't have time for mentoring or we don't have time for giving back. And for me, I felt guilty. Some of my guilt was that I didn't feel like I was giving back in the community enough because it was all I could do to work and support my family. But as we were writing the book, we realized that there were things that we were doing to give back, and that you can give back even when you're busy, and you don't have to wait until you retire, because literally a smile at the grocery store is giving back to someone else.
And so in the book, it ends with Susan Braun, who's the CEO of the Jimmy B. Cancer Research Foundation, who's certainly a great example of giving back for the majority of her career, writing a letter to her younger self. But there are plenty of ways for us to give back on a daily basis, because we all know something that we pass the mic around. Every one of us has something we can teach another person in here. We might not think we do, but we all got experiences, and we just found if we're willing to be real and be who we are and be a bit vulnerable, which we were in the book. There weren't stories in there that we would normally like to say, let's tell this embarrassing thing that we did. But you know what? It's real, and if it can help somebody, then that was kind of the reason that we wanted to write the book. Yeah.
So I think it's all about remember who you are, and it starts with figuring out who you are. And then, you might be able to tweak it a little bit, but if you just try to change too many things, then you're not true to who you are. So hopefully the book and what we've heard from others is that there are tidbits in there and things that people are excited to try to implement and help to achieve that success, create that balance in their lives, and experience some fulfillment. And so that's why we wrote it, was to share those stories and give encouragement to people who don't think they can either find the success, the balance, and the fulfillment. So that's the why. So we try to cut it off at about 25 minutes in terms of prepared remarks, but we are open to Q&A and any questions you want to ask or embarrass us or anything else.